What I really want to talk about today, though, and I want to close it out for you, is to really give you some sense of how you can really increase that alternative monetization for your shows, how you can really go from start to grow to build, as we've been talking about today. And one of those things that I've discovered over the 6 years of doing this is the binge factor. That it comes down to something I call the binge factor. You know, some people call it the it factor, the special thing, but in podcasting, it's the binge factor. And, you know, this isn't my first podcast. The binge factor is actually my most recent podcast. My first podcast was on 3D printing. It's totally geeky. It's WTFFF, which is the geeky term for 3D printing, fused filament fabrication. If you didn't know what it was, you were in the wrong place. And that I started with my partner and husband, Tom Hazzard, and we started that 6 years ago. And we went and have well over 60, almost 600 episodes on it. So this is my 500th that I'm showing in the image there. But in it and doing it, one of the things that we discovered was that we really hit on a formula that was working. And we did it purposefully because we came out of the world of product design and development, as Chrisella mentioned. We came out of the world where we knew how to get people to buy what we had to sell. We knew how to get them to buy and use something again and again. And more importantly, as we tapped into social media and viral marketing and all of these things that came on in the last 15 years, we realized how to get people to rave about them as well. And so we tapped into all of these things. We called it the right fit formula, right? The right fit products, the right things on the right shelf at the right price, right? All of those things fit together and made something absolutely consumable. And that's what we want with our podcasts, right? We want them to be highly consumable. So when we went to launch our show, we took all of those great features and we built them in. And it turns out that those work for everyone. They work no matter what niche you're in. They work no matter where you're trying to go. They are the success factor for our clients. And so that's where we've come to what we call the binge success factor. And we build that in at a strategic place at the very beginning when we're starting a show, when we're launching it and we're thinking about it, or even when we take over a show and we're sort of figuring out how to make it sing, how to make it grow, how to get more people to listen in. Why should we care? Why do we want binge listeners? And, you know, this is the thing. Like, I didn't know what a binge listener was until someone hit to 100 episodes. And Tom and I did 100 episodes of that 3D print podcast in 5 months because we did it daily. So we did it 5 days a week and we did a ton of content. And so we hit 100 episodes quickly. And so someone messaged us on Twitter and said, hey, I've been binging on your show all weekend and I got to episode number 50 and I wonder if you're going to be covering the subject in the next 50. If not, could you record it? So by the time I get to it, I have the answer to my question. So like it cracked me up. I thought, people are binge listening to me? People can listen to me that much? Like, that seemed crazy to me. But as I thought about it more, I really started to dive into the consumer patterns, right? The consumer patterns of what are working. And that's actually the same thing that we did in our product business, right? We were looking at this consumption pattern and we were looking at the things that were working. And part of it was that everything was designed to be right by that. And I'm going to talk about how that looks in a little bit. But we are also tapping into consumable behavior. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit today, because consumable behavior, it leads you from not just binging on something, but then buying, where we go and we trust. And that's the success factor that we want to build in. So I would love for you guys to drop into the chat what your big success factor. If you said my podcasting journey is successful because I, wanted to create an impact in the world, I wanted to do some social good, then I want you to put a number 1 in the chat. If your goal was just to entertain people and take, get their worries, put their worries aside and just be entertained by what you do, be funny, be serious and lead us through a crime story, whatever that is, then pick number 2 and do entertainment. If your goal is to raise your authority and get more publicity for your business, your brand, or for you, then I want you to put number 3. If your number one thing that you want is to grow your list, get more leads in, and just grow that audience of what you have, then I want you to put number 4 into the chat. And if your goal is to make money from the show, I want to make some hard cash from this, then I want you to put number 5 in the chat. And Tom's going to add them up for me and give me a little quick survey, because I got to stay giving this presentation to you. But, here's the thing. When we are trying to go from this, and from building our show, from starting to building to growing to building our show, what we're always looking at is we're getting people to trust us. So we want to go through that know, like, and trust factor. Well, here's the way that we normally do it, right? We say, hey, trust us. Right? I got you covered. I was featured in Harvard Business Review. I've got all these podcasts. I'm really successful. I have 1 million listeners. I'm a keynote speaker. I founded this company. This is how we normally go about doing it. We push out all of our skills and we push out all of these things. Sometimes we go even further and we say, hey, I'm all muscly and strong. I've got 1 million listeners. I'm making all this money off my show. So it's all about brand me. And that's why you should listen to my show. But that's not necessarily why people are trusting you. It's not necessarily how it turns into business. It's not how it leads to success factors. And I know you're saying, but Tracy, Joe just made $100 million, and Tim Ferriss and Gary Vee, and they're all raking it in. But I want you to think about the time and age when they started their shows. They started their shows and they already had broad audiences. They were already bloggers and authors, and they had entertainers, and they had fans and followers and lists already when they began. So they started from a better place and a farther along spot than probably you are starting from today. And from there, they also were able to capitalize on that at a time when we were still in what I call the me cycle of business, right? Today, we're not in a me cycle of business. You know that we're in a we cycle of business. And it's absolutely required that we're out there not being all about me in our brand anymore. So we've got to move, and we've got to move into that know, like, and trust. We've got to get more listeners. We've got to go through the funnel, and we've got to get them to buy. But you know what? I don't like this model either, because this model means that I need more listeners. I need more people. I need more up there to try to create buyers. When we just heard 3% conversion rate on your listeners, your leads, your email lists, I want 37%. I want up over 25% minimum to anything that I do, or it's not really worth my time. I could do something else with it. So the problem with a funnel, and it doesn't really matter whether we're going up or down, is that we need this broadness at the top of it, right? We need this absolute broadness at the top of it, so that we can create a larger amount of people, so that we will get the amount of buyers and have the success that we need at that place. So now we have the issue of know, like, and trust being in a cycle. So where we're coming in at any place, right? We can come in with the trust. We can move into know and like. We can move around it, and we can come in different places. And this is why this works. So Tom and I did 250 products at mass market retail, and a lot of them were at Costco and other places where you buy stuff every single day. And the thing is that we trust Costco, right? We trust the platform where we're members, where we do business. And so Costco buyers, Costco consumers trusted that Costco would bring great products and that they would put them on the shelf. Now, when we move into Apple and other places like that, we don't necessarily trust that they're great at curating things, because they're really not. But we trust that I now don't have to go to some random person who I've never heard of before website and put my email address in to get their feed, to be able to take a taste, to take a listen, to understand them. So that's where we are in the podcasting world. That's why everybody's out there saying you got to be in all these directories, because we need to be where the listeners are, right? That syndication process is extremely important in giving us this broad base of going into the place that they trust, so that they'll find us, they'll get to know, like, and then trust us. And so we'll be creating this cycle, like spinning off onto itself and cycling again and again and again. And with that, we go into that trusted channel model. So we go into a channel of which people want to view here, and now they've got our show. People want to listen here, and now they've got the show that they want to listen to. So we're moving through that process. But why does it really work? Why is the binge listener, the binge viewer, the bingeability help us go faster from binge to trust to buy? Well, I don't know what you're watching right now. You could be binging just about anything on Netflix or Hulu or wherever you go. I think this one's on Stars, but we've been binging Outlander. And here's what happens. Here's the pattern of behavior, the consumption pattern of behavior that happens. And it doesn't matter whether you're consuming content or you're consuming products. This is how it works. When I go in and I'm watching Outlander week after week after week and episode after episode, sometimes all in one day or one weekend, right? What's happening is this: I'm getting this view of this beautiful Scottish Highlands that looks so romantic. I want to learn more about these cool stone circles. So the next thing I know, Tom's watching, documentaries on Stonehenge. I'm starting to get, a little cooped up, and I'm starting to Google things like Outlander tours of Scotland and thinking about how cool that would be. And even though it's 90 degrees here in California, I'm also going out there and going on Amazon to try to buy knitted wool and knit patterns to make the Outlander cowl, to make a Sassenach cowl. So, looking at all of those things, like the consumption pattern is high. Now, Outlander didn't do a great job of merchandising because none of those things were bought by them. But you know what? You can do that. You can translate that binge watching of you and pull that into making sure that they're buying from you. That you, by building the three things I'm going to talk to you about today: care, integrity, and skills, we can demonstrate and build faster trust because they're binging on us. And while they're binging on us, we have a chance to accelerate their view of how we work, what we do, and how we care about them. So that is going to be the fastest path to the binge factor, the fastest path to our success factor. So I want to make it clear that it's never too late to pivot. So we actually first started with Feed Your Brand. Feed Your Brand was the show we started a couple of years ago. And Tom and I started a brand new show every single year because we want to be in it with our clients. We want to understand how hard is it to launch a show. We never pay for anything. We do everything as organically. Of course, we use some of the lessons we're teaching everybody. So we're doing that, but we want to see how hard it is to get organic listeners and how it is to create success in a show. And sometimes we have a different success factor, right? We test out and we do a different success model. Well, here in the case of Feed Your Brand, Feed Your Brand's purpose was for us to nurture the podcaster community that we had already built. Our fans, our followers, the people who look to us to teach them how to podcast, to give them the best lessons learned, our clients to help them keep podcasting, to prevent pod fading. So that's what we were there to go give tactics and systems and things that were working. And I started to do interviews because I wanted to know more about different types of podcasters. So I started to expand it and do interviews. And during the process of doing those interviews, I started to psychoanalyze people. And I would listen to their show. I would, in fact, listen to 5 or 6 in a row. And then I would talk to them about what I believed their binge factor was, the bingeability that they had created in their show, and the reason they were getting growth and success with their listener base. And so I decided at the beginning of this year, because people were like, I love that you call it the binge factor. And I was like, duh, that should be the name of my show. And so we shifted the whole brand and everything today. And now we have a brand new website. So it is never too late to pivot. And I didn't lose any of my listeners in that process because technically we did it right. But in that process of doing it, what we've created is just a shift in brand that made now this show more bingeable than it was before. So we want to create that for ourselves. We want to create that for everything. So now I'm going to go into the 3 different things that binge build for you. So the number one binge builder is to remember that it is not about you, that it is about your audience, that it is about them first. Because if we don't show we care, then we have issues with getting their attention to begin with. So when they don't know you from anyone, and they are looking at your cover art and your face is all over your cover art, I have no idea if you're an expert in marketing, if you're the best life coach out there. Your face doesn't tell me that. What your face might tell me is that you're not like me. And if you're not like me, then I am not likely to give your show a chance. So that's one of the reasons our number one thing that we recommend to our clients is to get their face off their show and their name off of it, unless you truly are doing a podcast for your audience that you already have and that you're expecting that audience to help you grow. The other part of it is we want to get less promo-y about what we do, right? That demonstrates, that shows people that we are in it for them. So we want to get shorter and less promo-y intros. We want to get to the content faster. The number one thing I hear from listeners again and again is like, any intro is too long an intro. So we want to keep it short and sweet. The other thing we want to do is we want to make sure we don't put in promos and advertisements too soon in our process, because that generates a disregard for the binge listeners out there. So binge listeners, one of the characteristics is they like to wait until they see 25 episodes in your feed before they give you a shot. And if in that 25 episodes, you're selling from your trailer intro episode through everything, and you're constantly selling, you're making these extra long introductions with 30 seconds to a minute worth of ads and promo at the beginning about what your stuff is and what your course is, they're less likely to take on your show and keep going. So you've just lost a potentially great, really active listener who's interested in this because you turned them off because you haven't earned the right to sell to them yet. Now, here's the thing. Look, once you hit 25 episodes or 100 episodes, you have totally earned the right to sell. And there's no reason why you shouldn't actually get the right to sell from the beginning. I mean, they do it on TV shows all the time. So why shouldn't I have the right to do that? That's actually why Tom and I built Monetize, because we thought if we can just get through that first stage, prove to the audience and those early adopting fans that we're in it for them, that they can believe and hear this truly great content. And then later, when we have really relevant ads and promotions and things that are really great for those early episodes, why shouldn't they have ads in them? That's exactly what we did. We built it, Monetize, a whole software as a service system that just mixes those ads in, takes them in and takes them out, so you can capitalize on it later when you've earned it. And that keeps those binge listeners, they've given you that shot, they've gone all the way through, they're hooked on your show, they're not going to be turned off because you now added ads. In fact, they're going to be thrilled that you added ads, because when you add ads, it means that you're now going to stick around for them. So that's the time to do that. So the other part of how we show we care is we get curious. We get curious about our listeners. We ask them questions. We're engaging with them. We want to find out what they want to know. I know you've heard that again and again today, but getting curious about your audience is extremely important. And we can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get others interested in you. It's my favorite quote out there. This is from Dale Carnegie. But we also want to do that, don't forget, with our guests. We need to get curious about them as well. So we actually need to care. We don't need our guests as like, we just need a guest in and we don't care. We need to care about them and be curious about what makes them tick, and be curious about why that's relevant to our audience. And that care overall is taking care of your audience through taking care of your guests. So we want to do both things at the same time. So now let's go to number 2. Our number 2 binge builder is to serve consistently. And I know that you've heard that a lot today, this consistent and constant thing, more content, like doing all of that. But here's why that works. It works because it's an integrity builder. So now we just went through and we built in all these great features and the great way that we approach our show that shows that we care for our audience. Now we need to prove to them that we will do what we say we're going to do, and that we will show up for them again and again and again. So imagine if you're a life coach or you're some kind of consultant and coach out there, and you have something that's very complicated to sell, right? That's complex to talk about. When I am in there going after week showing up for you, then it isn't this sort of weird, like, what are you going to do for me? How is this going to work? I am seeing you show up for me all the time, that I'm willing to suspend belief that you can do what you say you're going to do, because you've already proved to me that you will do one thing for me. You will come in and be in my ear week after week after week. And that in and of itself is a trust builder. So now we've got more content, right? Because we earned the right. We've gotten through that. We are getting into filling our feed. So we've got this strength that we're building here, that we're showing up all along. Now, when we're filling our feed, when we're getting that filled, that's why 25 episodes is the magic number, because that's the number iTunes shows in its scroll. So you get to see 25. But if we're also showing the feed when people type in our topic, because we've covered so much of it, we're showing up for multiple shows, for different parts, for seasons, for all of these things. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. I think we've got tons of episodes on that and Feed Your Brand and articles and other things out there. So if you're curious about that, happy to answer questions on that. But one of the ways to do that is to make sure that I have all these shows, which is another thing. When I can show up and niche down, that's why I have so many shows. I have a show on blockchain innovation because I was really curious about it, and it's something that I'm implementing as a structural basis in my company, and I needed to learn more. So I started a podcast called The New Trust Economy. I have a podcast called Product Launch Hazards, with 2 Z's, of course, because hazard for me. And so I've got that going on, and that's my give back to the Amazon sellers and the inventors of the world so that they can understand how I built the success and how we managed to sell as many products and make as much money for our clients as we did. I don't sell anything there. I just literally give away that content. And then, of course, we have Feed Your Brand, and we have the Binge Factor, and we have WTFFF, which now we have a sponsor on. And so, 6 years later, not that we didn't take ad dollars and stuff along the way, but we're about to launch a series with Hewlett-Packard. So our feed, when someone finds me and they are looking for me, they see me showing up again and again across varying topics and into multiple areas. And what that's doing for me is creating an integrity of, I'm going to show up for you and I'm going to be there for you. So it helps me get chosen for speeches. It helps me get articles and columns, which is why I wrote a column for 4 years or almost 5 years for Inc. magazine, right? All of that happens and all of that came about because I showed up and they could find me online. I wasn't some hidden person and I wasn't some startup that they weren't sure what they were going to get. They could hear and see and exactly what they were going to get. So that integrity matters there too. So we also want to be everywhere. And I know that sounds exhausting and really, really confusing. And I get that. And I understand the overwhelm of that. That's why I have a business. That's why we go from video to audio to blog to social show graphics to follow-up emails for our clients so they don't have to do that for them. But if you're not in the convenient place that matters for your audience, then you're not showing up in the world. And, this is the thing. The 2 a.m. principle, I call it. The 2 a.m. principle is that when we're in pain, when we have a need, when I desperately need, because I just got thrown into this distance learning thing to figure out some STEM programs and STEAM programs for my children, I'm going to go out there and search for it. And I'm going to go and find some WTFFF podcast episodes where we talk about STEAM education for girls, STEAM education for kids. And they're going to be like, oh, that show's been around for a while. I know they're going to help me bring in this science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So I'm going to go there. But the other part about it is, when I'm looking at 2 in the morning and I'm stressed, I'm starting in the place where I feel the most comfortable or in the place where I know I will get a result, right? We always get a result from Google. We don't get null results. 20% of what you see, what's typed into Google every single day, Google's never seen before. 1/5 of what is there. They've never seen it before. So they have to give that answer because if Google showed up nothing, we'd stop going to Google. So it sends it to a place that it knows it can trust. And here's where we come into what we've tapped into. And that's why I'm saying you have to be everywhere, including your website and blog. And I'm not going to go into great detail on that right now, but I'm going to tell you that it has to be a WordPress website and a really open WordPress website. None of these that are constrained by frames and doesn't let you add in plugins and do all of those things. And you want to do that because there's a significant difference between Wix, Squarespace, and many of the other websites out there that are being built for speakers, authors, and podcasters, because it doesn't have the same search power. And if we're not showing up on search at 2 in the morning, then we're not showing up. And then we also need to add in YouTube into that because Google owns YouTube. So if we really want to show up on search, the #1 search engine in the world, we have to have Google videos as well. So for many of our clients who don't want to do video, who don't want to have their hair done like me, Then, of course, we go into it and we do audiograms, right? You can do full-length audiograms on YouTube and you still have videos, or you can do video supplements and do other things. So there's a whole way to do that. But the other thing that I want you to remember and tap into, that us podcasters have a huge advantage, because we are tapped into something Tom and I call verbal SEO, verbal search engine optimization. And that's because of the Amazon Alexa device. That's because of Hey Google. That's because the algorithms are shifting to using our voice patterning and the way that we ask for things and see things. So here's a great example. In our household, we have a lot of Alexas around. Alexas control our lights. They control our grocery list. They control our playlists, our musical playlists. And my 5-year-old couldn't read, but she could get up to the Alexa and she could take over the music in the house. She could interrupt her sister and she could say, Alexa, play Who Let the Dogs Out, and just annoy everybody, right? She could take over that playlist in her own way, and yet she can't read yet. So imagine what that generation is going to be able to do and how they're going to search. If we're not in the right place for them, then we're not in the right place. So here's the number one thing I want you to do, and I'm just going to give you this tip right out. You want to take your whole entire show, create an entire full-length blog, not a transcript, a blog. You can go to thebingefactor.com and check out how I do mine, and you'll be able to see what it looks like. But you want a full-length blog, and you do not want to rewrite this. You do not want to edit it. You do not want to make it short. You do not want to put timestamps in it, and definitely don't put Tracy says and guest says. You don't want that either. So we want to do that because that has power. And that leads us to our number 3 binge builder. We're going to show our skills. We're not going to tell. We don't want ratings and reviews. We want raves and shares, right? We don't need testimonials. We need shout outs and mentions. Those are really what's going to get us more. Those are going to get us those raving fans. And now that moves us into care and integrity and skills shown. These are the key factors to getting us that huge trust. And they're to getting us the trust with the binge listeners, who it really matters with the most active listeners out there. So what can you do with this? How can you show your skills? And remember, we were talking before about some of those, I was talking about some of those coaches and consultants who have complex things to share and to demonstrate. And so we tend to spout off, and we hear it all the time in the health and wellness world. We're spouting off all of our scientific skill sets and all things like that. But the reality is that it's a lot easier if we show listeners where we are and how we work with people. So this is one of my favorite podcasters I've met in a long time. And Kim Seltzer, we just have absolutely had the most wonderful conversations. I did an interview with her on the Binge Factor. She has a love and relationship podcast. She's charismatic. She's been doing it for 6 years. And I think maybe even longer than that. So she's got a lot of shows on her belt. She does 3 shows a week. And what's brilliant about it is each one of them demonstrates tremendous value, caring, integrity, and skills to her listeners. It does all of it. So it's no wonder her trust factor's off the chart, and she's able to convert them into clients easily and quickly. And her first show is a topic-based show. So she's talking about a topic, something serious that they're struggling with, questions from her audience. So she's deeply understanding of where they are today, and she's addressing the topics for them. The second episode in the week that she does is she interviews a guest, because she knows that guest exchanging and that relationship building in the guesting community and that audience exchange is a growth builder for her show. So she doesn't want to miss out on that. But she does something really interesting. She frames her show with the guest on air. She does an introduction that starts with framing the topic and relevance of why she's bringing this guest on and what they want to talk about, to keep her guest in the lane, to keep them giving value and not moving off and start selling their thing to her audience. So she stays in authoritative control of her audience from the beginning. And that's a really interesting model, because I don't interview, when I interview my guests, I don't do an intro or a close with my guests on air. And that's because my guests I want to become my listeners. So my strategy is a little bit different. I purposefully tell them when they come on the show that I'm going to do a separate intro and a separate close, and that I'm going to really rave about their show, or I'm going to talk some more about their binge factor. So they may want to, that they should listen to the show after it's aired. So that gets them hooked on the show itself. And said, most of us who go on podcasts, we don't really go back and listen to it ourselves. We're like, I was there, I did the interview, I'm not going to go back. But my way is to tease them and drive them back into it. So I'm doing that. And so I'm actually working on building a little bit of guest value at the same time. So listener value and guest value go hand in hand. So we also want to show our guests value and skills, right, along the way. So this is kind of an interesting model to look at. But when I started my ink column, I would get these pretty famous brands and people getting me to write features. They would solicit me. I'd interview them. I'd write a feature about them. Sometimes I'd do a podcast with them. But I'd get back to the point that they didn't share the article properly afterwards. And it would drive me crazy. So I created a process, and I call it ego bait. And there's a whole episode on Feed Your Brand called Ego Bait. So you can go out there and find out more details about it. But what I discovered over time, out of sharing hundreds and hundreds of articles and then thousands and thousands of episodes on my behalf and tens of thousands on the behalf of our clients, what we've seen is that by creating our graphics in a very certain way and by choosing what it says, we can get our guests to be smarter about how they share things and how they participate in the value creation process. So we get everyone to up their skill sets together. And so we show them the skills. So I interviewed Pat Flynn. It hasn't aired yet. So you're getting a sneak peek at the graphics that we've created. And so the ones over here, the one on this side says guest podcasting is the new guest blogging. And it's a quote of what Pat said on my show. And normally that's what most podcasters would do. They'd highlight a big quote out of what this great guest said. They put their picture and the guest picture, and they'd make them about the same size and, somewhere on the art. And then they'd share that out on social media. And they, most times the guest will heart it. They'll love it. They'll thank you, but they don't then go and share it to their channel. They don't then go and share it to their audience. And there's a reason for it. And so when you email it to them, they still don't share it, right? They feel that this is a little too self-serving for them to share to their own audience. So why do I want to quote? I want to put into my audience a quote I said when it's already my audience, right? I want quotes from other people. I want quotes of what people say about me. So that's what we've done on the other side here. This is what a true ego bait quote is. It's something I will usually say in either the intro or the close. And in this case, it says, Pat Flynn is one of the best teachers, not just for podcasting, but for creating a whole digital business. That sounds like an endorsement of his entire company, right? He's not only likely to share this out on social, which shares the episode that he was in, shares my show and me strategically here because his picture is smaller, but he's also likely to do what I tell him to do in my follow-up email to him, which is I give him an embed code to properly put cross-links back into his website. So now his site is linked to my site is linked to him, and we're moving through this process. But keep in mind, I have even more as we go through this process, because I take my whole process for what goes on in the Binge Factor is that I start with giving the great podcasters in the world publicity by being on the Binge Factor, talking about their bingeability, talking about their show, which is something that they want to talk about. And then I go from there to write an article for Authority magazine. So then I create this infographic for them. And this is Erica Blocker, Moms with Dreams. Fabulous story, amazing show. She gave great tips about how she handles getting great guests, increasing listeners, producing like a pro, encouraging engagement, and monetizing your show. These tips actually are what become a part of a BuzzFeed roll-up in the future. Now, BuzzFeed's kind of slow at taking them, so we don't have not every single one gets picked up every single time, but we work really hard to work with them to try to get the right ones picked up. And so when we are building these infographics, though, it's a way to get them to not only share that they were on my show again, but share the article, which links to the video, which links to the show, right? So we're creating this through, but we're also not pushing them out oh, please share our show again. Please share the show we did again. We've given them something new to share. And that's why this is really working for us. And then we go one step further. And if we were to do the BuzzFeed roll up, we would give them yet another different one that shows that they were featured in BuzzFeed. And so all of that. So how would you guys like to experience the process? Would you like me to show you how it works? Because when I show you how it works, when I show you what this experience of how I bring you through, how I demonstrate skills, how I demonstrate integrity by doing what I say I'm going to do with you, and how I build trust with you, guess what's going to happen in the process? You're more likely to become my client. And why is that? Because if I went out there and said to you podcasters out there, hey, I've got the best hosting and production company in the world. You guys should come on and you should be a part of my show. And I'm going to give you publicity and I'm going to do this. If I just said I am the part of the biggest hosting company in the world, you're going to go, oh, she's going to try to sell me something. This is a sales call. This isn't publicity. But if instead I say, I serve you, I serve you, I serve you, and I never once sell you, I let you decide for yourself that I'm the one that you want to work with, then that is going to show you and demonstrate you. And you're going to move up that trust factor all on your own. And that's how I'm going to create value. I'm going to create an ability for you to be on the show. Now, not every one of you is out there going to qualify because you don't maybe have a show that has 25 episodes or more. You haven't achieved a certain level of listenership. You may not qualify for the Binge Factor. And I didn't love that, because I don't want to leave any part of our audiences behind. I don't want to leave podcasters behind. I don't believe in the free model. You're going to hear that from me again and again, because I want you to have skin in the game. I want you to make sure that you are committed to this, because there is too high of a pod fade rate. 72% of podcasters quit their show. Only 18% stick it out. That is not the case on our platform. We have less than 12% pod fade rate on our platform over the 4 years that we've been doing this. And why is that? It's because we make sure that you're committed to it, and we make sure that we're committed to you at start and all the way through. So here's my commitment to you new podcasters, you podcasters who haven't gotten the appreciation and the audience that you deserve. I've partnered up with the UK Giving Tuesday podcast and the Australia Giving Tuesday podcast, and we're partnering up and we're all bringing out these Giving Tuesday shows. So every Tuesday, it's probably starting closer in July, but we're starting up in the next few weeks. There'll be shout outs for great shows, little clips of the shows, little reasons why I think they're going to be bingeable in the future. So you're getting more than just a shout out. You're getting an opportunity to hear my analysis of your show as well. So you can apply for that at thebingefactor.com, and you can go to the Giving Tuesday podcast page. Anyone can apply. And I have to tell you, like, I just put a feeler out to see if people were interested in this. And I did it on social media, which was such a mistake, because I got over 600 podcast shows to apply. So I've got a backlog of them. And so my team and I have decided we have to amp this up. We're doing at least 5 a show to try to make this and we're putting in some criteria to make sure. So you may not qualify right away, but maybe we'll be able to give you a shout out on our website and do some things in the meantime, because I still hate to leave any show behind. And so the last thing I want to leave you with, the things I want you to think about, is that if all that thinking and focusing on the binge factor of your show and focusing on that trust building model of care to integrity, to showing skills, to getting that trust, if all that did for you was to get 10 more listeners, to give you a shot out of the gate, to go from the Apple listings and choose you because they were like, well, this looks like intriguing, would that grow your audience? Would that build your show for you? If you got one more guest to share you on social media instead of ignore the fact that they were on your show, if you got one more guest to recommend you to great guests, if you got publicists to send them people so that you could refuse some of them and be more picky about your guests, would that grow your show? And if you could get listeners to quote you, share your stories, and rave to their friends because they were binge listening and on to your every word, then would that help you go from start to grow to build? And if focusing on your care factor showed listeners the value of working with you, would that grow your business? And if focusing on your integrity factor demonstrated that you could deliver week after week and you were worth doing business with, would that grow your business? And if focusing on your relevant skill factors and demonstrating, showing those skills, would that show people that your skills were valuable and useful to you? And if all of those things are in place, does that go quickly from know, like to trust to buy in that process? And is that the best way for you to build not only the binge factor, but build the business factor, that success factor we talked about at the very, very beginning? The one thing that you consider to be important, is that going to build that for you? So I want you to start your binge factor today. I want you to grow your trust factor today. And I want you to build your monetization power today through the binge factor. So I've got some gifts for you. There's all kinds of free stuff. We have our boot camps are free. Our like all of this publicity opportunities are free. My publicity tips are free for you. We've got tons of stuff. We just give it away because I want you to be successful. I want this marketplace to be successful.